Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is John. I've been playing Pokemon since 1998, since it first came out, but only competitively within the last 10 years. I've been developing and building this website that I would like to share the functionality. I'll post the URL in the description. Let's crack in. So there are six main functions of the website. You can either use the cards here or the nav bar in the top right hand corner. It has a Pokedex, a team draft, team builder, a coverage calculator, a stat point calculator generic, and a stat point calculator specific. And we'll go through this functionality now, starting with the Pokedex. So, as you would imagine, this is just a flood of information about Pokemon that are available in Pokemon Champions. Has their typing, abilities, their base stats. You can click on any one of the Pokemon and it'll open up a Pokedex output. So here you'll see their level 50 stats with 0 SPs, the abilities that are available, and then their full move pool which you can search. If you want keywords, you can look at the different types. So if you just want to look at grass types, you can then filter by category. If you want to look at physical, special, or status, and you can also look at the flag. So we've got bite, bullet, contact, pulse, punch, recoil, moves with secondary, and then all the different integrations and interactions that can occur there. We can then have a look at the speed tiers. So this has three entries for each Pokemon. It'll have their max 32 stat points plus nature, their just base 32 stat points, no nature, and also 0 stat points. And this is useful guide if you need to have a look to see where your Pokemon sits in terms of the speed table. So here we can look at Gengar. He's at 178 at full 32 SPs plus nature. So he's ranked 25th. You can see what he ties with and what outspeeds Gengar and what Gengar outspeeds. We can then have a look at the items that are available in Pokemon Champions. Again, we've got filters here, whether you're just wanting to look at type plates, held items, resist berries, status berries, or all of the mega stones that are currently available. We've got the abilities, so each ability that is available in Pokemon Champion, a short description and the amount of Pokemon that that ability has. So here we can see adaptability. There are 5 Pokemon in the format that have it. You can click here and it will show you the 5 Pokemon that have adaptability. And then there's Aerialite, which turns normal moves into flying. Only one Pokemon has this, and it's Pinsir. And again, you can search here if you want, whether you're typing in, you can search the name, the description, or the Pokemon. Then we have moves. So again, this is the full list of moves in the format, similar to what we saw in the Pokedex output, but this is now applying to all Pokemon. So again, if we want to have a look at grass, and we wanted to have a look as an example for Energy Ball, we can see the type, category, power, accuracy, crit, priority, the effect that has a 10% chance to lower the target's special defense, whether it's a multi-hit one or such as Rock Slide, which is not a grass move. We can see Rock Slide has a spread move, so this is applicable for doubles. The different flags, whether it's contact, bullet, secondary, etc., all of that information's there. So again, we can have a look if we want to look at pulse moves. It'll show us the pulse in the format. And then lastly, it just has some battle information for those who are new or not familiar with all of the mathematical concepts that are employed. I've tried to consolidate a kind of short, concise information about, every attack roll has a damage multiplier of 85 to 100%. So with each of the 16 values having a 6.25% chance for each of the values, and then every attack can store a crit, and then the 4 crit stages explained. So again, you can take that information, go back to moves, have a look at moves with 3 crit. So as an example, Flower Trick. We can then come back here and say +3 is guaranteed. And then there are other interactions such as the scope lens, which is not a megastone. Um, Holder's crit ratio is raised by one stage. So here, then, if we were to go back to moves and we were to look at these moves with crit 2, and we were to use them with this item of +1, they would be 3. So again, that'd be your guaranteed crit. Multi-hit moves, if you have the ability skill link, again, if you're not sure, you can go back here, type skill link. The Pokemon's multi-hit attacks always hit the maximum number of times. But if you don't have skill link, then it's a 35% chance to either do 2 hits or 3 hits, and a 15% chance to do 4 hits or 5 hits. It has some basic information about the status conditions and volatile conditions, again, where there's a little bit more information that needs to be available. Right, then we can move on to Team Draft. Team Drafts is a creative process in which it helps you find candidates for your selected Pokemon. And we'll definitely do a series based on teams generated from Team Draft. But as an example, if we were to put in a Pokemon, say Pikachu, it will try and find good candidates within the format that, pair well with Pikachu. So you can see Rotom Frost here because of the levitate, has some, ice coverage, which is good against ground. It's super effective where Pikachu is not very effective against grass and dragon. And it scores points based on this. And then it also, it ranks every Pokemon in the format. So if you're not keen on Rotom Frost, or you'd much rather prefer Gyarados, or you want to build into a rain team, you've got different options there. Again, we'll go through that in its own episode because there's an absolute ton of combinations that could come out of this, which I'm excited to test out and see on the ladder how effective these teams are. If we were to go, we can go to Team Builder. Team Builder is what you would typically find for team building websites. You put a Pokemon in, it shows you its defensive, what it's immune to, what it's resistance to, and what it's weak against. It also has an offensive where it takes the 2 stab types from these and it tells you where it's super effective against. And then it also has extended defensive and extended offensive, where it breaks from the typical, 18 single types and builds a full comparison against all of the dual types that are, again, currently available in the format. And again, extended offensive. We can have a look at, dark ground. Don't really have an answer for these. I mean, we can add an extra move that does that. And there's also a reference page if, again, need to just brush up on which type is super effective or not very effective against each of the different types. Here in Team Builder, you can import a poker paste as well as exporting a poker paste, and there's links to do that as well. There's an edit option here that allows you to modify items. You can change the moves, the nature, and we can do some SP modifications here. And this is kind of where you go and where we'll go in future content to build our Pokemon teams before we take them on the ladder. There's a link here to view coverage, and that's our next topic of discussion, which is our coverage calculator. So on load, it just loads the leaderboard of all the different Pokemon, their typing, if they've got, or what abilities they've got. Some are a little bit split out. As an example, Azumarill, huge power gives it a bit of an advantage over, Thick Fat, which has a bit more defensive compared to Sapsipper. But essentially, if we were to have a look at, and you can click on the Pokemon name here, and it'll load a coverage output. And this is, it uses 7 moves across 272 Pokemon to deal the most amount of damage. So you can see Hurricane scores well against these Pokemon. And what the algorithm does is it pairs all Pokemon against each other, tries every single move, identifies the move that does the most damage in that scenario, and then lists it here. And you can see that clearly if you look at the results page. And then we've just got a green highlight on which side does more damage. And then it also has some speed information here. So again, with Mega Pidgeot at a base 141 speed, you can see how that compares. And and you can see who's faster and who will deal more damage. That's not to say it's going to OHKO you. It's just going to deal more damage than you're going to deal to it. And then you can come down to where now Pidgeot Mega starts out speeding its opponent. So again, you can see the damage the opponent there. And this is a group buy on all the different moves. So you can see, a U-turn would be good, maybe only against Raichu Alola, compared to, Steel Wing. Obviously does more damage against rock Pokemon than, say, Heat Wave or Hurricane or Brave Bird. So here you can go through and have a look to see what moves score the highest, and then pair that with testing how that plays out in the real world, and then mix in some status and utility moves. Next, we'll move on to the stat point calculator generic. So this is designed if you don't have any specific stat point calculations in mind, you can pick a Pokemon and it'll load up. Again, abilities, you can pick nature, you can select your held item here. It generates a showdown input down the bottom, and it has the stat values. First, what I like to do when coming into here is look at the speed SP. So if I don't invest anything, it will show who I speed tie against. And then if it's zero investment from my opponent, so if they're typically running, a slow Pokemon, Halucha's, famously jolly and very fast. So, that's not going to effectively beat Halucha unless you find one, maybe they've gone unburdened and they've doubled their speed and invested nothing. So you would only need 9 in that scenario. And it goes all the way up to the top until where you can look at speed tying, or whether you need a speed nature. So if I select this, it'll tell me I need a speed nature. So I can come up here and I can select timid, and then it sort of resets this because now it'll show who I speed tie against. It's still again 0 SPs. And I could invest 26 SPs, and if none of my opponents invested in speeds, or Tailwind or any speed control, my Gengar would be the fastest. However, the likely scenario is where most opponents will run 32 plus nature on some of their Pokemon. So again, you can see here scenarios where Gengar will never outspeed given the current inputs. I can modify that if I'd like to do Choice Scarf, and then then with my 26 investment, then I'd only need 6. If I have 6, then 149 times the 1.5 gets me to 222 outspeeds. So getting the speed is kind of nice initially, and then what it does is it will automatically allocate for auto. So it'll try and, in most scenarios, it'll try and find a balance between hit points and defense. If I take speed out, then you can see it's just tried to evenly distribute the SPs across it. In the background, has a matrix calculated to identify the optimum ratio between hit points and defense. And that's something that I can cover in another series on the channel. But you can see here the default spread, and then that will adjust if I put in my 32 speed SPEs. And then obviously I'm going to choose an attack. So I can choose Shadow Claw, probably pick Shadow Ball, given my special attack's much higher than my attack. And now it also does the same algorithm for your attack values. There's all these different breakpoints where, investing in 30 and 31 doesn't yield any more damage because of the rounding down. So it can go through here and it finds the 10 most common values, which you can then filter to say, maybe I don't need full attack. I do need some bulk. And you can move this slider down and it will uninvest from your special attack and reinvest in your defenses. There's also an option here to go physical or special. So if I click physical, then it's going to try and find the best hit point ratio to block physical attacks or special attacks. Now, there are some exceptions, such as Steelix So if I go and load Steelix in, or was it Steelix Mega? And I go to auto, it says auto bulk may not be optimal for Steelix Mega's defensive stats. Consider optimizing for physical because it's going to try and bring that special defense up. And if I clear them down, to try and match, but he's already got massive defense, and there's a few ways to take advantage of that. So you're best off investing in physical. And then, as an example, Sylveon is the other way, again going auto. Auto bulk may not be optimal for Sylveon's defensive stats. Consider special, again, because you've got 117 and 152. So you're better off hitting that special and then doing your speed, selecting your moves. So, say if we put 32, we don't have a, or we can do also Fairy Feather, we can do a held item, we can do Moonblast. So there's your 32 speed. Maybe don't need to invest in 32 because it sort of seems the numbers seem to cap out at about 30. But again, you can bring that down, and then again, it tries to find a nice generic spread that you can take to the ladder. And then from there, you go on to the stat count specific. And this is where you have a specific scenario in mind that you need to overcome or be defensive against. So an example is Gengar versus say Alakazam, and you're going to use a Shadow Ball. So here, or before I select a move, sorry, it does calculate speed. So if you just put 2 Pokemon in, if Alakazam has no SP investment, you need 11 SPs to beat Alakazam. If Alakazam has max SPs, you need 172, which is 28 and a speed nature. And then if Alakazam is max SP in nature, you cannot defeat. You cannot be faster than it with current stat point. And then if I was to put in an attack, it would show me that with 0 investment, I would deal 89.2% damage. And then you can see here, 1 SP gets me to 29.3, but investing 2 and 3 doesn't change that again because of the rounding. So you're best off investing 4, gets you to 93.8, or you can aim to OHKO 93.75% of the time. And that's what that 4 SP will give you. Or you can aim to OHKO 100% of the time with 14 SPs and 105. But again, this is based on my opponent's SPs being 0, 0. Maybe they've got 6 in hit points, and that kind of moves the needle. Then you only need 1 SP to do 87.5% of the time. And this goes back to that 16 damage roll numbers. But again, all of this is calculated out, has the extended nature range. But say if my opponent is full 32, 32, even with full investment, I'm only doing 75.3, but luckily that's not the case. There are other held items, effects, status values that you can apply that work, and abilities that may or may not influence the fight. You can also then, in reverse, say if Alakazam was using Psychic, and we'll just, by default, it will do 32. You can increase that to nature. So say if this is a modest Alakazam with 32, it doesn't look like there's much we can do to survive that hit. So let's hopefully may our opponent doesn't run any special attacks, but you'll be able to see here in this scenario that if we fully invest, it'll do 89% of our life, but probably don't want to fully invest. You probably want to only aim to survive the attack 93.75% of the time. And you can see here it calculates all the different stages based on how many SP spend. So in 36, this is the best combination: 8 hit points, 28 SPD, and then that 28 seems pretty solid until about here. Then you've got 919. It's probably going to give you different values there, and then all the way down to if you don't invest anything, then it's doing 146. And then, yes, we've got whether you're doing singles, doubles, terrain, weather, and then all the different options there, whether they crit, you crit, whether they've got a special defense nature, which can be good for, Incineroar, who typically has, or Snorlax, who might have a calm or defensive boosting nature. So all of that gets calculated here, and then you can take this back to your team builder, and you can, when you've got your Pokemon selected in here, you can update those values manually here to generate your PokePaste. One thing I did skip over on the team draft. So if you do have you put in your Pokemon, you're like, yep, this is a great pairing for Gengar. And then again, it keeps building on the weaknesses of the teams, keep trying to add it up. So it definitely recommends adding some sort of a Rotom Wash or Rotom Heat. So say we'll add a Rotom Wash, and then again, it keeps building that type efficiency. We can add Tinkerton. Garchomp is always coming up in these results. It's just very effective against the format, and you can see why it's a meta pick. And then to round off the team, it's got Bugfire, Gyarados, Pelipper. We'll add Volcarona because we don't have Bugfire yet. Once you have the team complete, you can open that up in Team Builder, and that opens up a new tab, has your team, the full team stats again, defensive, the extended defensive, offensive, and extended offensive. And you can see, the team does quite well across the board. We've got something for everything except maybe electric flying, extended defensive. Very hard to get a team that is very defensive against all the different dual types. I'm yet to see a high scoring defensive team. And again, you can see Meowscarada is very weak to Bug, being the Grass Dark. But defensive as a whole looks pretty good. It tries to keep the balance between the two, making sure not to keep too many weaknesses to your resistances. Again, you can post that out. So there's relationships between the two. And again, so here we can have a look at the coverage of Gengar Mega. We can see Focus Blast is big damage against a majority of these Pokemon. Whether they're common and you encounter them enough to run Focus Blast is up to the meta and who you get randomly paired against on the board. But Shadow Ball's a safe bet. You can see how much damage that does across the board. And then, one scenario, Poltergeist does more damage because Alakazam's got a lower defense than special defense. And Foul Play does pretty significant damage against Starmie Mega if that's what you want to run in this scenario. So you got full creative control. It's just fully designed to inspire ideas. And then yes, we also have a donate button. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, I'd certainly appreciate that. It helps run the website and keeps the content growing. Other than that, if you want to see more of this content and how this website and the tools develop, please like and subscribe. Otherwise, I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.